She handed me a plastic container full of lukewarm chicken and soggy pasta, smiled, and said, "We decided to have the gathering at your sister's place instead, but we brought you some leftovers." I stood there alone at Willow Creek Garden Resort, the venue I had reserved, and paid over $3,000 for holding this sad little container, like it was a participation trophy in a game I didn't even know I had lost. That's when something inside me quietly, finally, snapped. Let me back up a bit. My name is Audrey Thompson. I'm 32, a senior financial planner based in Dallas. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that being the middle child in a family like mine means one thing: you become the unpaid event planner, the emergency wallet, the emotional cushion, and you never, ever get credit. My older sister Grace is 35. Everything she does is met with applause and hashtags. She could post a blurry photo of a latte on Instagram and get 10 heart emojis and your amazing comments from our mom. Kyle, our baby brother, is 28, a part-time employee at a sporting goods store and a full-time family darling. He's finding himself taking time pursuing passion, whatever excuse works for that month. He breaks things, loses jobs, oversleeps family events. It's all brushed off as Kyle being Kyle. And then there's me, Audrey. The one who shows up, pays up, fixes, manages, smiles politely through every instance of being overlooked. When we were kids, I'd use my babysitting money to replace things Kyle broke. My mom would tell me, "You're so good with money, Audrey. Your brother doesn't have any." When Grace got her first car at 16, I was helping cover the electric bill, and it only got worse with time. Last Christmas, I paid for a week-long family vacation to Colorado. I'm talking flights, cabin ski lessons. Over $7,000. Grace brought cookies. Kyle brought his appetite and his complaints about the cabin's lack of a hot tub. When I casually asked about splitting costs, Mom said, "Let's not talk about money, it's the holidays." Dad didn't even look up from his phone. That's how it always went. For Mom's 60th birthday, I rented out her favorite restaurant. 50 guests, custom cake, open bar, photographer, final bill over $4,000. Grace ordered $50 centerpieces from Amazon and was applauded like she'd planned the whole event. Kyle showed up late with a wrinkled card and was treated like a hero for attending. No one mentioned my name. Mom stood up and thanked the family for a beautiful celebration. I sat there smiling, swallowing the same lump in my throat I'd learned to live with for years. When I got promoted last year, made partner at my firm, and was featured in a financial magazine, Grace rolled her eyes and muttered, "Well, I guess we all have to be obsessed with money." This from a woman who once asked me for $800 to cover her spa weekend after her divorce and never paid it back. Meanwhile, Kyle got Employee of the Month at his job selling hiking boots, and my parents acted like he'd won the Nobel Prize. You get the picture. But despite everything, I still showed up. I still organized, still hoped naively that someday they'd appreciate it, that maybe just once I wouldn't feel invisible. I think a part of me kept doing it for Grandma Eleanor. She passed 5 years ago, but she used to whisper, "You're my practical girl," and she meant it like a badge of honor, not a label. She saw me. She started the Thompson family reunions decades ago, and keeping them going felt like honoring her memory. So when our family group chat, cheekily named Thompson Family Circle, lit up a few months ago, I responded the way I always did. Mom started it. "It's reunion time again? Who's taking charge this year?" Before I could type a word, Grace jumped in. "Audrey should do it. She's so good with planning and details," Kyle added. "Yeah, I mean, financial planners are basically professional organizers, right, LOL. I paused. I wanted to say no. I wanted to let the silence sit there. But I didn't. Grandma's voice echoed Family Matters Audrey, so I wrote, "Sure, I'll coordinate. But can we talk about splitting costs this year?" 3 hours of silence followed. Then Mom replied, "Let's figure that out later. First, let's pick a venue." That later never came. Over the next few weeks, I brought up cost sharing again. Grace ignored me. Kyle said money's tight. Mom changed the subject every time. Still, I planned. I researched. I created spreadsheets. I found the perfect spot, Willow Creek Garden Resort. It had everything gardens for Mom's club friends, fishing for Dad, picture-perfect views for Grace's Instagram, a playground for Kyle's kids. Price tag $3,000, not including food or decor. Everyone loved it in the group chat. Grace said, "This place looks amazing." Kyle said, "The kids will love it." Mom said, "Your grandmother would have adored this." No one mentioned money. When I brought up the cost again, the conversation veered off to menu preferences. Grace's husband suddenly had a gluten allergy. Kyle's kids wouldn't eat anything green. Mom demanded her favorite lemon chicken from a caterer across town. I should have stopped right there, but I didn't, because I still hoped this time would be different. So I booked the venue. I put it on my credit card, and I went all out. Personalized place settings, custom party favors, a slideshow of Grandma Eleanor's photos. I spent hours calling vendors, organizing catering, emailing the venue manager, Emma, who said, "You're the most prepared family organizer we've had all year." If only she knew. The night before the reunion, I was up past midnight prepping cooling containers, finishing place cards, writing heartfelt notes for each family member. That morning, I was up at 6 a.m., dressed in the sky blue dress Grandma would have loved, on my way to pick up $800 worth of catered food. By 8:30 a.m., I arrived at Willow Creek. The tables were set, flowers arranged, slideshow queued, photographer on the way. Everything was perfect, and by 11:00 a.m., I was sitting alone. No texts, no calls, just empty chairs and the slow realization that I had been completely abandoned. At 11:45, Mom finally called. "Oh, honey, didn't you get our messages? We moved the reunion to Grace's house, closer for everyone. We tried to tell you. There had been no messages, nothing. They were all at Grace's, laughing, swimming, cutting cake, without me." She ended the call by cheerfully saying, "We brought you some leftovers." And that's how I ended up standing in a $3,000 venue dressed like Hope, holding a cold plastic container full of betrayal. But the real shock that was still to come. The leftovers sat on my passenger seat like a taunt. I couldn't bring myself to open the container. The ride home was dead quiet. No music, no calls, just me gripping the steering wheel while waves of disbelief crashed over me. How do you process that kind of betrayal I had spent weeks preparing for this reunion? Poured time, money, and emotional energy into creating something meaningful. And in one call, my mother reduced it all to a change of plans and a mismatched tray of cold food. When I got home, I dropped the container straight into the trash and collapsed onto my living room floor. The tears came fast, deep, ugly sobs that curled my body into itself, like it was trying to protect what was left of me. That's when Leah called. "How's the reunion going?" she asked, upbeat. I couldn't even form words at first. The sobbing was too loud, but eventually I choked it out. Every humiliating detail. Leah didn't say much at first. She just listened. Then she said something that changed everything. "Audrey, check Grace's Instagram." My fingers shook as I opened the app. There it was, post after post. My entire family gathered at Grace's house around her brand new pool, all smiles and hashtags. Family time, work spontaneous, love Thompson clan. One post had the gall to include a massive sheet cake with Thompson Family Reunion 2023 written in baby blue icing. Spontaneous, please. That cake alone required a 24-hour notice order. They'd planned it. They excluded me on purpose. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I wasn't just forgotten. I was deliberately left out of the reunion I paid for. And Grace had the nerve to caption one of the photos. "Sometimes the best gatherings are unplanned," with a smiley face. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I sat down at my laptop and opened my client software, the same one I use to track high net worth portfolios. Only this time, I wasn't calculating someone else's wealth. I was calculating my own depletion. 5 years. That's how far I went back. The Christmas trip to Colorado, $7, $428.93. Mom's 60th birthday party, $4, $367.52. Kyle's unpaid car loan, $2,800. Grace's rent during her divorce to reconciliation drama, $9,600. Dad's fishing boat contribution, $3,500. Custom gifts, graduation dinners, last-minute flights, anniversary surprises. The endless list kept growing, each entry a scar I'd mistaken for a badge of honor. The total $62 or $574.89. $62,574.89. I stared at the number until the zeros blurred into one another. That wasn't just money. That was the down payment for the condo I'd been dreaming about. That was years of compound interest lost. That was my early retirement timeline slipping through my fingers. I had subsidized their lives, Grace's curated aesthetic, Kyle's finding himself lifestyle, my parents' pride projects. I was their financial scaffolding. And the moment I asked for help one time, they ghosted me. I stared at the screen, still in my pajama pants, wine-stained t-shirt from the night before, hair tied up in a defeated bun. And I decided something had to change. That night, Leah came over with Thai food and her usual fire. "We're not just venting anymore," she said. "We're planning." Together, we crafted a message. Firm, but not cruel. Assertive, not aggressive. But it didn't feel like enough. "They're going to dismiss it," I muttered, deleting a paragraph for the third time. "Say I'm being dramatic, that I'm obsessed with money." "Then speak their language," Leah said. "You're a financial planner. Turn this into business." She was right. If they treated me like an ATM, I'd treat them like clients. That's when it hit me. I opened my design software and created a logo, Thompson Family Accounting. Then I got to work. Individualized invoices, itemized lists, due dates, bank details, client codes. Grace's invoice came to $17,328.45. It included her rent support event contributions and even that catered vegan brunch I hosted during her clean living phase. Kyle owed $13,420.22, most of it in unpaid loans, gifts, and events his kids had attended that I funded. Mom and Dad's combined invoice, $24,528.15. Aunt Susan, God bless her, had a zero balance. I labeled everything clearly, not out of vengeance, out of clarity, out of respect for myself. Once everything was ready, I opened our Thompson Family Circle chat. I took a deep breath, and I wrote, "Starting today, I'm setting new boundaries. I've tallied every expense I've covered over the past 5 years. The reunion was the final straw. From now on, all family-related expenses will be shared equally. Please see your individual invoice attached. Audrey." Then I hit send. The app spun for a second, and then confirmed delivery. It was done. I silenced my phone, shut my laptop, and poured myself a glass of wine. My heart was hammering. I'd just declared war, or maybe just finally stopped surrendering. 3 minutes later, my phone lit up. Mom was calling. Then Dad. Then Grace. I didn't answer. I didn't owe them that anymore. But what came next? Even I wasn't prepared for it. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone had practically melted down. 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, 5 voicemails, from people who hadn't so much as texted me back the day I sat alone at Willow Creek. Now suddenly I was headline news in the Thompson family soap opera. I made coffee before checking a single message. I sat at my table, calm, steady, like I would for a high-stakes meeting with a client. I wasn't going to let panic hijack me before I even knew what I was dealing with. First voicemail, Mom. Audrey Elizabeth Thompson. "What on earth is this invoice nonsense? You need to call me immediately." Her voice had that tight, brittle tone she reserved for when I embarrassed her in front of other people. A tone that said, "You've made this uncomfortable for me, and that is unacceptable." Next was Dad. "Hey, sweetheart, your mother's pretty upset. What's going on with these emails? Just give us a call. We'll sort it out." Then Grace, she'd left 3. The first was annoyed. An invoice, seriously. Audrey. That's completely inappropriate. The second was borderline angry. "You're acting out. You need to fix this. Now." And the third, that one was my favorite. Mom says your behavior is affecting her blood pressure. You always make everything about money. Kyle's voicemail was just laughter. Good one, sis. You almost had me going. They thought it was a joke. They thought I was the one being absurd. But what really struck me, not a single message acknowledged the actual facts that I had paid for everything, that I'd been left behind, that no one even told me plans had changed. They wanted to be outraged but not accountable. So I started calling them back, one by one. I began with Mom just to rip off the Band-Aid. She picked up on the first ring. Audrey, what is the meaning of this? Invoices to your own family. Really, hi, Mom, I said evenly. I'm assuming you got the breakdown for your share of the reunion expenses. This is outrageous. We don't send bills to family members. I let that sit for a beat before responding. Apparently, we also don't show up to events family members paid for, and when we don't even have the decency to tell them. Oh, you're still upset about that. Still, I clenched the phone tighter. Grace's house was more convenient, she continued. You always go overboard with these things, Audrey. Not everyone has your kind of money to throw around. That's when the calm broke. This isn't about money, I said, voice shaking. This is about respect. You've all used my generosity for years, and the one time I asked for help, you ghosted me. You held a party without me, on a day I planned funded and invited you to. Mom went quiet. Then she said low and defensive, You've always been so independent, Audrey. We assumed you didn't mind. I did mind. I do. And that assumption. That's the entire problem. She started to say something else, but I cut her off gently. I have to go. The invoice includes my bank info. I'd appreciate payment by the end of the month. And I hung up. Next was Dad. I expected more resistance, but he surprised me. Your mother's upset, kiddo. You know how she gets. This whole invoice thing? Can't we just forget it and move on? Dad, would you ignore this kind of treatment if it happened to one of your coworkers? Well, no, but I'm not just your daughter. I'm a person, and I deserve the same basic courtesy you'd show a colleague or even a stranger. He sighed. I didn't know you felt this way. I've tried to tell you. Many times. No one listened. I'll talk to your mother. We'll figure something out. Grace was next. She picked up mid-ring. Mom is a wreck, Audrey. You've crossed a line. Have I? Because from where I'm sitting, you crossed it first when you moved our family reunion to your house and didn't tell me. It was last minute. My house just made more sense. No one sent a text. No one called. That wasn't an accident, Grace. That was a decision. Well, maybe there was a miscommunication. There wasn't. I checked. No missed calls. No messages. Don't gaslight me. She went silent. Then I'm not paying this invoice. It's petty. That's your choice, I said. But going forward, I won't be involved in any family events without equal contribution from everyone, including your beach vacation, which you just asked me to help plan. Fine, she snapped. We don't need your money or your spreadsheets, but you do need my respect, and you've lost it. She hung up. Kyle was the last call. He was predictably amused. Sis, you really went full finance ninja on us, huh? Your share is $546.18, I said calmly. Yeah, that's not happening. Between paychecks, plus the kids need soccer gear. And yet you just bought a $700 gaming console, I said, having seen the braggy Instagram post. Wow, creepy. Are you stalking me now? No? I'm just pointing out that you always have money for what you want, but never for what you owe. When did you get so bitter? I'm not bitter. I'm just done being exploited. He mumbled something about calling me later and hung up. That evening, Mom sent a group message family meeting. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Our house. We expect you to be there. I replied, I'll be there, and I'll bring copies of everyone's invoices. The next day, I drove to my parents' house with a manila folder labeled Thompson Family Reimbursements. Neatly tabbed inside were breakdowns of every trip celebration and emergency I'd funded over the last 5 years. As I pulled into the driveway, I paused and looked at the house, the same house where I grew up, where I learned how to ride a bike, where I cried after my first breakup. It didn't feel like home anymore. Not after the reunion betrayal. Not after being reduced to the family checkbook. Inside, everyone was already gathered. Grace sat on the couch, arms crossed. Kyle had headphones slung around his neck and was scrolling through his phone like this was all a joke. Mom looked tired but not apologetic. And Dad, well, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I sat down, opened my folder, and said, "Thanks for coming. I'll be brief." That got their attention. I handed out printed copies to each of them, color-coded by name, amounts owed, dates, categories. Total $62,431.78 in family expenses over the past 5 years. Grace blinked. "You kept receipts?" "Yes," I said, "because I work in finance, and because it started to feel like my love for this family was only accepted when it came with a bank transfer." Kyle let out a low whistle. $62,000. That's more than my car, and it's money I never asked to be paid back for until now, I said calmly. Because I was raised to believe family helps family, but it turns out I was the only one helping. Mom opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. I planned the reunion as a chance to reconnect. You all ghosted me and celebrated behind my back. That was intentional. That was hurtful. And then you handed me leftovers like I was an afterthought. Grace snorted. It wasn't that serious. I looked directly at her. You changed the plans. You hosted it. And you never told me. You made me a stranger in my own family. Silence. Then Dad spoke softly. "Audrey, we didn't realize. I didn't realize. You've done a lot, but we're still a family. We shouldn't be putting price tags on memories." I nodded slowly. "You're right. We shouldn't. But for 5 years, I was the only one paying for those memories. And when I stopped, you all stopped showing up. That stung. I could see it land." I continued. "So here's what I'm proposing. I'm setting up something called the Thompson Family Fund, a shared account. Any future trip celebration or emergency will be split equally. No more silent sponsors, no more guessing games. If we can't afford it together, we don't do it." Kyle muttered, "That sounds like a board meeting, not a family." "Good," I said, "because you've all treated me like the unpaid secretary. Now we're operating with transparency." Mom's eyes glistened, but her voice was sharp. "Why didn't you ever tell me you felt this way?" I looked her dead in the eye. I did, dozens of times. But you only hear me when I'm swiping my card or solving someone else's crisis. Grace stood. "So what now? We pay you back or we're cut off." "No, I'm not asking for every dime I said. I'm asking for symbolic reimbursement, whatever you're able to pay. But more importantly, I'm asking for a culture change, for accountability, for respect." To my surprise, Dad leaned forward and said, "I think she's right." Mom frowned. "Excuse me." He looked around the room. "We've leaned on Audrey without thinking. I've seen it. We take her for granted." Kyle spoke up next, his voice unusually subdued. "I can pay some back. Not all. But I can set up automatic contributions to the fund. Monthly." Grace looked caught between guilt and defensiveness. I didn't realize how far it had gone. I stood, collected my folder, and said, "This isn't about punishment. This is about finally being seen. Not as the reliable one, not as the wallet, but as your sister, your daughter, a person." And then something happened I never expected. Mom stood up, walked over, and hugged me. For real. Not the awkward sidearm kind. A full chest-to-chest hug. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We did rely on you too much. I don't want to lose you." I didn't cry. Not yet. But my throat burned. That night, something shifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And a week later, something else happened. The envelope was pale blue, like the ones Aunt Susan always used. She didn't believe in email or texting. She said, "If it's not worth writing by hand, it's not worth saying at all." I opened it slowly, unsure what I'd find. I hadn't spoken to her since before the reunion. She was Mom's older sister, but she'd always felt more like a quiet shadow presence in my life, watchful, understated, but deeply there. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper folded twice. In her delicate looping cursive, it read, "Audrey, I heard what happened at the reunion. I wasn't invited either. I want you to know I see you. I have always seen you. You were 11 when you started helping your mom with Kyle's homework. 14 when you got your first job and spent half your paycheck on Grace's recital dress. You've been holding this family together like glue for decades. They called it your nature. I call it their convenience. You have a good heart, but that doesn't mean it should be used like a sponge. It's okay to say no. It's okay to stop pouring into cups that never fill yours. I never said much before. I hoped they'd grow up on their own. But now I see I should have spoken up sooner. I'm proud of you for drawing the line, for waking up. Love, Aunt Susan." I sat on the floor letter pressed to my chest and let the tears fall silently, not just because someone saw me, but because she always had. I thought back over the years' Thanksgivings where she'd quietly slip me a wrapped gift with a note. For when you finally do something for you, birthday cards that said, "You're more than what you give." Small acts, subtle gestures, a look across the room when someone said something that made me shrink. She had known. She just waited for me to know it too. And suddenly, something inside me shifted again. Not anger, not grief, resolve. I wasn't just recovering from a betrayal, I was waking up from a lifetime of conditioning, of being the good daughter, the helpful sister, the one who didn't need anything, the one who made it all easier for everyone else. It was time to become someone else, someone I hadn't allowed myself to be. That week, I pulled a file out of my desk drawer I hadn't touched in over a year. It was labeled The Audrey Project. It was a rough outline for a financial podcast and newsletter series written for women like me, quiet caretakers, silent contributors, the invisible backbones of too many families. I'd buried it after Grace said, "At brunch." One day, "Nobody's going to listen to another budgeting podcast, Audrey. That market's dead." But it wasn't about the market. It was about my voice. And now I was ready to use it. That Sunday, I met Aunt Susan for tea. She brought her tiny Pomeranian Daphne and wore one of those wide-brimmed sun hats that made her look like a retired film star from the 1950s. We talked about everything, the invoices, the fund, the confrontation. She smiled and said, "You know they'll test you, even now. It's hard for people to adjust when the sun starts setting boundaries." "I know," I said, "but I'm not the sun anymore. I'm not warming people who leave me in the dark." That made her laugh. Before I left, she pulled a folded envelope out of her purse and handed it to me. "For your project," she said. Inside was a check for $5,000. "I believe in what you're building," she said, "and I think it's time the world hears from women like you." I hugged her tighter than I ever had before, and that night I bought a domain, The Quiet Backbone. My first post was titled, "The Family Tax What They Never Thank You For But Always Expect." Within 48 hours, it had 17,000 views. Within 2 weeks, it had over 100,000. And then an email came in from someone I never expected. It was Grace. And what she said wasn't just an apology. It was a request that would force me to decide if I could ever let them back in again. I opened the email 3 times before I could actually read the whole thing. Subject line: "Can we talk? I need your help." It was from Grace. The sister who had lied excluded me from the reunion and handed me a plate of leftover cake like I was the housekeeper. And now she was asking for my help. Her message was short, barely 5 lines. "Audrey, I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm going through something serious. I'm leaving Drew. It's messy. I'm scared. Can we meet?" That last sentence knocked the wind out of me, not because I still felt anger, but because I recognized that tone. I'd written in that voice before after my own breakup, after the layoffs at my firm, after losing a friend in college. That voice that says, "I hate that I need help, but I don't know what else to do." I stared at the screen, unsure what to feel. Grace had always been the golden child, the one with the husband, the house, the Instagram perfect life. But I'd also seen glimpses. The tight smiles, the quiet tension when Drew was around, the way she changed her voice on the phone when he walked into the room. I replied, "Let's meet at the cafe on 4th and Harbor, tomorrow, 5 p.m. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I had to hear her out. The next evening, Grace showed up late. Hair in a messy bun, no makeup, sunglasses still on indoors. She looked nothing like the curated version of herself she showed the world. She slid into the booth across from me, took a breath, and said, "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "You said it was serious." She hesitated, then removed her sunglasses. Her left eye was swollen. My stomach dropped. "Drew?" I asked. She nodded, tears brimming. "It's been happening for months. He never used to be like this. Not physically, just cold, controlling. But recently, her voice cracked. I reached across the table and took her hand. All the anger I'd stored, all the humiliation I'd carried, it didn't disappear. But it shifted, made room for something else. Grace. You don't have to explain. Just tell me how I can help. She broke then. Full sobs, in a public cafe, and for once I didn't care who was watching. We spent the next 2 hours planning, a lawyer, a temporary safe place, documentation. She hadn't told Mom and Dad yet. She was afraid they'd side with Drew or worse, tell her to work it out like they did when things got hard in my life. By the end of the conversation, she looked at me with raw gratitude. "You were always the strong one," she whispered. "I see that now. I think I hated you for it, because I needed to be rescued and couldn't admit it." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. That night, as I drove home, the emotions crashed over me in waves. How many years had I begged for someone to see me? And now, in her moment of collapse, Grace finally did. But something in me held firm. I would help, but not at the cost of my own soul again. I wrote her a clear email the next morning. "Grace, I'm here for you. But we're going to do this differently. I'll help you through the legal side lawyers, financial documents, a therapist I trust. But I'm not your lifeline. You'll be building this with support, not dependency. And I need you to do one thing in return. Tell the truth to our parents about what happened and about what you did to me." She replied an hour later, "Deal." The following Sunday, we met at our parents' house. Grace had a black folder with printed statements, photos, and texts. I had my manila folder of old reimbursement logs. We sat across from Mom and Dad like two daughters asking for the truth to finally be seen. Grace went first. She told them everything about Drew, about the bruises, about the fear. Then she said, "And about Audrey. I owe her more than an apology. I owe her my life. Because when everyone else turned away, she showed up, even after what I did. Mom cried. Dad sat silently, jaw clenched, trying to process it all. Then Mom whispered, 'Why didn't you tell us sooner?' Grace answered, 'Because you made Audrey your emotional landfill. You only listened when things were clean and convenient. She deserved better. So did I. I didn't speak much that day because for once I didn't have to. The next morning, a $25,000 transfer hit my business account. Memo line for everything you covered, from all of us. But that wasn't the real moment of transformation. That came 2 weeks later when my podcast got picked up by a major financial platform for syndication. And the real full circle moment, it happened at the company gala, where I was honored with an award I never expected. Because sitting at the VIP table was a man named Peter Gold. And when he heard my name announced, he said, "Wait, you're the quiet backbone." After the call with Aunt Miriam, I sat in the living room in silence. No music, no distractions, just the sound of the refrigerator humming faintly in the background. I looked around at the carefully folded chairs, the untouched buffet, the banner I'd ordered online that still hung over the fireplace, Family First Reunion 2024. What a joke. But I didn't cry. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and sat back down. I opened my phone. One by one, I began issuing the refund requests, canceling unused catering portions, and withdrawing my prepaid gift cards for the family raffle I'd planned. And then I texted Noah, "Hey, You know what? Let's stay in this cabin the rest of the week. Just us. We earned it." He replied 3 seconds later, "Heck yes, I'll be there in 90 minutes, with marshmallows." That night, as the sun dipped behind the trees and fireflies began blinking in the dusk, Noah and I sat on the cabin deck, wrapped in fleece blankets, roasting s'mores and laughing over charades. He even tried to teach me some Gen Z slang, which I failed miserably at. I didn't mention the family. I didn't need to, because the people who matter were already here. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't another excuse or insult. It was a long, quiet message from my cousin Ava, the one who used to braid my hair during sleepovers and who hadn't made it to the reunion, Audrey. I heard what they did. I wasn't part of it, I swear. I've been distanced from that mess too. But I just wanted to say you didn't deserve any of it. And I'm so proud of how you handled it. And then another one. From Uncle Drew. I just learned about the switch. Audrey, I had no idea. I thought it was still at the original spot. Please let me make it up to you. Slowly. The fog of betrayal began to clear. Not everyone had abandoned me. Some had been lied to. Some had been shut out. Some were just scared to speak up. But a few chose to reach back. And I saw them. I saw the ones who stayed. That following Monday, I went back to my apartment, packed away the reunion supplies, tossed the leftover decorations into a trunk labeled "Forgotten Good Intentions." I thought about throwing it all out, but something stopped me. Because maybe this wasn't a waste. It was a mirror. A painful, necessary reveal of what had been simmering underneath my family for years. And I wasn't going to pretend anymore. I booked a therapy session, my first real one. I told the counselor everything, not just about the reunion, but the years leading up to it. The guilt, the pressure to be the responsible one, the way Mom used me as a safety net while praising Aaron and Kimberly for every small effort. It felt strange to admit out loud, like I was betraying them by simply telling the truth. But my therapist nodded and said, "No, Audrey, you're not betraying them. You're finally protecting yourself." And those words stayed with me. That fall, I started something new. A support group small, at first just 3 women I'd met at the community center. All of us had lived through family dynamics where silence was expected and gratitude was weaponized. We met every Friday over coffee and cheap croissants. And we laughed, and we cried, and we reminded each other we weren't crazy and we weren't alone. By December, I'd named the group The Ones Who Stayed. Not because we stayed for abuse, but because we stayed true to ourselves. It was New Year's Eve when I got the email. Subject line, Family Reunion Funds, request for clarification. It came from Aaron. Short, stiff, vaguely legal in tone. It started with, "Hey Audrey, hope you're well. We've been trying to reconcile the family fund balance for the last quarter. There seems to be a discrepancy between what was allocated for the reunion and what was returned." Returned? I read the rest of the email 3 times. Then I laughed. Out loud. Alone in my apartment. See, here's what they didn't know. That family fund they kept referencing, I was the sole contributor. That PayPal pool, the joint family bank. Every year, it got magically restocked even when Aaron never chipped in, even when Kimberly forgot her password, even when Mom insisted she'd bring cash, and never did. It was me, always me, quietly, without thanks. So when I shut it down after the failed reunion, there was no discrepancy. There was relief. I wrote back, "There's no discrepancy. I funded the reunion. I canceled what I paid for. The balance is $0. Feel free to contribute next year if you'd like. Take care." I didn't even sign it, love Audrey. They didn't earn that anymore. A week later, Mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, long, rambly, not apologetic, but anxious. I didn't know Aaron changed the location. I didn't know he told everyone to go somewhere else. I thought you were fine with it. You're always fine with everything. I stared at the phone. She always said that. You're always fine. What she meant was, you're always the one we can hurt because you won't fight back. But she was wrong now. Because I had changed. I didn't block her. I didn't respond either. Boundaries aren't cruelty. Sometimes they're mercy. By spring, the ones who stayed had grown to 9 women. One brought her teenage daughter to a meeting. One brought cookies and told us about finally confronting her older sister. One quiet and shy shared for the first time after 3 months of just listening. And me, I showed up with nothing to prove. Just a notebook, a warm drink, and a story that no longer had power over me. A few weeks ago, Ava came to visit. She brought photos from her own side of the family, her kids, her job updates. And then almost timidly, she pulled out a folded note. "Grandma wrote this the week after the reunion," she said. "She never sent it to you. But I think you should see it." I unfolded the paper slowly. In my grandmother's spidery handwriting, it said, "Audrey has always been the glue. We took her for granted. If she walks away, I can't blame her." I closed my eyes. That was all I needed. Not groveling, not dramatic tears, just someone somewhere finally telling the truth. The room went silent, and in that silence, I healed. My story didn't end with a confrontation. It ended with clarity. I used to think family was something you had to keep no matter what. Now I know family is who shows up when there's nothing to gain, and I will never again beg to be included. Because the ones who matter, they don't need a reunion to prove it.